Welcome to episode 176 of the Sports Marketing Machine podcast, powered by Revelocity Sports. I'm your host, Jeremy Neisser. This is part 2 of a 3-part series I've dubbed Fan Journey. If you haven't listened to part 1, I'll put a link in the show notes. Go back, take a listen to that first one as we laid out the full framework: capture, know, respond, return, grow, and talked about why the fan journey is already happening at your team, whether you designed it or not. Today, we're going to go one layer deeper. We're going to talk about where fans fall out of the journey, and more specifically, why it happens in the same places every single time. Now, I want to tell you something that might be a little perhaps uncomfortable. It doesn't matter if you're in AAA, single A, summer collegiate, college, pros, doesn't matter. If you're in baseball or hockey or any sport, doesn't matter. If you're in a market of 30,000 or 7 million, the pattern is consistent. Every team that I've worked for and now worked with, and we've worked with a lot of them, has fans leaking out of their fan journey in the same 3 places. 3 places. That's it. And most teams have no idea it's happening. Today, we're going to fix that. Let's get going. Last episode, like I said, I put a link in the show notes. It was episode 1 of this 3-part series. I said something that I want to go back to. The fan journey isn't something you build. It's something that's already happening. Your job is to stop letting it happen by accident. So if the journey is already happening, the question is, where are fans exiting before they should? And here's what's interesting. When you ask most marketing directors why they lose fans from one year to the next, they default to external reasons: the product, the price, the weather, the economy, the competition, the list goes on. And sometimes those things are a real factor. I mean, a bad season's a bad season. If you got rain, you got rain. Like, some of those things you just can't overcome. But here's what I've noticed. A significant portion of fan drop-off, and I mean a significant portion, has nothing to do with the product. It has to do with what your team did or didn't do after that fan's first experience. Fans don't always leave because they stopped caring. They leave because you stopped communicating in a way that felt relevant to them. One stat in minor league baseball, because that's where I spent the majority of my career, and a lot of the teams we work with are in minor league baseball, 85% of fans who bought a single game ticket last year don't come the next year, which means that only 15% come back, and they have to go out and spend marketing dollars to get the other 85 to hit their numbers this year. That's a systems problem, and as you can see, systems problems have patterns. The first place where I see fans leaking out is between the capture and know phase. This is a gap where fans buy their first ticket and when your team actually does something meaningful with a relationship. Here's what typically happens. A fan buys a ticket, either online or they walk up to the gate or the window and they buy their ticket. They come to the game. Maybe they get a confirmation email. They definitely get a receipt. Maybe they get a survey 24 hours later that night, but that's about it. A couple weeks later, or even that same week, they're added to the general email list and they start receiving the same promotional email as everyone else. And I've done this before. I would go into my ticketing software, hit export, and then import into Constant Contact, and off I went. Because that's what we all were taught. Hey, I'm going to market to my past single game buyers and see if I can get them to buy more tickets, right? There's no acknowledgement that they were just there, no follow-up that references their experience, no next step that makes sense for where they are in the journey. They went from being a brand new fan, someone with fresh excitement, fresh memories, fresh goodwill towards your team, to just being another name on the list. And here's the expensive part. The window right after the fan's first game is the highest value window you'll ever have with that person. Their engagement is at its peak. Their openness to buying again is at its peak. Their likelihood to respond to a relevant offer is at its peak. And most teams let that window close without doing anything intentional with it. Think about it. Think about all of your marketing right now. You just had a bunch of single game buyers at your game. You've put them in the list. You've put together your promotional upcoming newsletter email and you hit send. Nothing in that is exciting them. They're just like, hey, I've been added. Here's what's coming up. And that's that. That's the capture gap. The second leak that we see is what I like to call the relevance gap. This is where they leak out between the know and respond in the fan journey. This is the gap between having data on your fans and actually using that data to communicate with them in a way that feels personal. Most teams have more fan data than they realize. A lot of you who listen to this have even software like Stellar Algo that's going to give you so much more information. This is a first known attendee. This is give you all the data at your fingertips pretty quickly. But they have probably survey responses as well and purchase history, all this stuff, right? But you've never really done anything around to work and build emails out to these folks or journeys to them. When you look at actually what you're doing, what are you actually sending to the fans? It's the same email to everyone. Here's the upcoming homestand. Here's the promotions. Click here to buy tickets. And the problem isn't that those emails are bad. The problem is that they're generic. And generic communication over time trains fans to tune you out. Think about your own inbox. Look at your own Gmail, email, Yahoo, whatever you got. Like when you get an email from a brand and it feels like it was written for you, it references something you bought, it anticipates what you might not want next, it feels personal, you pay attention. When it feels like a blast that went to 50,000 people, you scroll right past it. Your fans are doing the same thing with your emails, whether you know it or not. The fix isn't, we're just going to send more emails. The fix is, we're going to send more relevant emails. And relevance comes from actually using the data that you have. That, my friends, is the relevance gap. The third leak that I see is what is I dub the re-engagement gap. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm just going to call it the re-engagement gap. This is between the respond and return bucket here in the fan journey. This is the most expensive gap of the three, and it's the most common. Here's what happens. A fan will come to a game. They'll have a great time. You got a tremendous fan experience. You send them a few follow-up emails, and then life happens. They get busy, summer ends, school starts, or life just happens, season wraps up, and they just kind of drift away. You spend all that money to acquire that customer, and they just drift away. A lot of those fans would come back if someone asked them, hey, are you still a fan of us? They likely say, yeah, I just haven't bought tickets in a while. But what does most teams' re-engagement strategy look like for those fans? Either nothing, or they just sit in that database, or a promotional blast saying, hey, it's spring, opening day's coming. I'm using baseball as a reference here. Buy some tickets. That's not a re-engagement strategy. That's a promotional email. A re-engagement strategy is a system. It runs automatically. It reaches out to lapsed fans at the right time with the right message with a specific reason to come back. Not that, hey, we got games coming up, buy tickets. It's, hey, we noticed you haven't been back to the arena in a while. We'd love to see you back. Here's an easy way to do it. Here's a special offer. Here's an upcoming thing that we think would be of interest to you. That's the difference between a campaign and a system. A campaign runs once. A system runs forever. That's the re-engagement gap. So why these three gaps matter together? What's important to understand about these three gaps is that they compound, kind of like if you put money in a savings account, it just compounds with interest. If you're leaking fans at the capture phase, you're not activating that post-game window. Then you have fewer fans to communicate within the know stage. If you're leaking fans at the know stage, if your communication isn't relevant, then fewer fans make it to the return stage. And if you're leaking fans at the return stage, you don't have a re-engagement system. You're starting from scratch with new fans every single season, building on the base that you already have, which is what you should be doing. You don't need a huge audience. You just need processes to get these folks to keep coming back multiple times a year. Even if you got single game buyers to buy one additional ticket, or 10% of your single game buyers additionally to buy an extra ticket to your game. Like, the math of that is outstanding and will change your single game attendance numbers, change your per cap dramatically. The teams that grow their attendance year over year aren't necessarily the ones with the best product. They're the ones with the fewest leaks. They're the ones who have figured out how to keep moving fans forward through the journey. And here's the part that should be encouraging. You don't need to fix all these gaps at once. You just need to find your biggest one and start there. So here's the exercise for you. Look at your fan database, specifically the fans who attended a game in the last 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and they haven't bought a ticket since. How many of them are there? Now ask, what happened after their first game? What did your team send them? I know a lot of you send out surveys, which is totally fine. What was their first communication that they received, and when did it go out? Was it personalized to their experience? Was it a generic promotional email? What was it? If you can't answer those questions, or if you're not sure what the fan received, or even when, that's actually your biggest leak. That's the capture gap. That's where you start. If you can answer those questions, then ask, of the fans who received the follow-up communication, how many came back? If the re-engagement rate is low, you might have a relevance gap problem. Your communication exists, but it's not landing. Something to think through there. If your communication is relevant and fans are still not coming back after a certain point, then that's your re-engagement gap. You need a system that automatically reaches out to fans who go quiet. You need to diagnose your biggest leak. That's this week's worth of work. Even if it's just drawing this out and really understanding a little bit. And it may be something to say, hey, Jeremy, this is all great. We're going to do it at the end of the season. We're going to do it next week when we all sit down together as a team. That's okay. If you need some help with this, pop into my show notes, click the link, let's schedule a call. I'm happy to walk through all of this with you because I want to see you win. I want to see you sell more tickets and grow your fan base. The next episode is the final one in this series, and we're going to talk about how you actually plug these leaks and specifically where to start. I've kind of narrowed it in to these 3 areas where most teams are losing buyers. Because what I've seen over and over again, teams that diagnose things right and then try to fix everything at the same time, they end up fixing nothing. One thing at a time. That's the smarter way to do it. And the best teams already have the tools to do it. They're just not connected. That's next time. That's next episode that'll come up next week. If this series is hitting home with you, share it with someone on your team or share someone who's working in sports, trying to sell more tickets and grow your fan base. It would mean the world to me, but more importantly, get this podcast in front of people who are just like you, trying to sell more tickets and grow their fan base. Until next time.